Identity. Identity is your mental self-portrait. It's all the pieces that make up the concept that you have of yourself. It includes what career path you wish to follow, whether you're conservative or liberal, your spiritual beliefs, your marital status, how motivated you are to achieve, and so forth. For the most part, we don't consciously grapple with aspects of our identity until adolescence. This is reflected in Erikson's psychosocial stage of identity versus identity confusion. In this time of life, adolescents are faced with deciding who they are, what they are all about, and where they are going in life. They realize that eventually they will be responsible for their own lives separate from their parents, and they start to mentally search for what those lives are going to be like. At any given time, a person can be in one of four states regarding an aspect of their identity. They can be in identity achievement, identity moratorium, identity foreclosure, or identity diffusion. I'm going to work backwards through that list and start with identity diffusion. We'll take the example of vocational identity. What career path do they intend to follow? Someone who is in identity diffusion doesn't know what they want to do career-wise, and they haven't really given it much, if any, thought. It's just a big shrug. Don't know, don't care. Next is identity foreclosure. Here, the person has made a commitment to a career path, but they haven't explored meaningful alternatives. An example would be someone who comes from a family where everyone is expected to go into the family business, so the person assumes that that's what they'll do for a living. They haven't explored any alternatives. It's a foregone conclusion that that's what they'll do. The opposite of identity foreclosure is identity moratorium. A moratorium is a pause. In identity moratorium, the person hasn't made a commitment to a career path yet. They are still exploring their options. They might go into the family business, but they are also considering a career in either teaching or social work. They're still thinking it over, gathering information, and weighing pros and cons. After a period of moratorium, the person might decide, you know what, I do want to go into the family business. I find it personally meaningful, and yeah, that's my choice. At this point, they are in identity achievement. After exploring meaningful alternatives, they have made a commitment to this aspect of their identity. This is not a one-and-done process. Even if you have explored and committed to something doesn't mean that you can't or won't change your mind. People change their majors, people switch careers. People who intended to stay single may get married, people who get married may decide to get divorced. So they consider their options, then make a choice, then later reconsider their options and make another choice. Moratorium, achievement, moratorium, achievement. This continuous process of refining and revising identity throughout the life cycle is referred to as the mama cycle. A lot of context can influence an adolescent's identity development. An important one is parents. Researchers have found that a family atmosphere that promotes both individuality and connectedness is linked to positive identity development. This sort of relationship encourages adolescents to feel safe exploring alternatives and voicing their ideas. That means that they are less likely to wind up choosing options that aren't a good fit for them. Peer and romantic relationships also influence identity development. They can provide a safe context for exploring identity-related experiences and influence how each of them construct their identities. Digital platforms such as Instagram and Facebook have introduced new ways for youth to express and explore their identity and to get feedback on it from others. Finally, there is cultural and ethnic identity. This has to do with a sense of membership in an ethnic group and attitudes and feelings related to that membership. For some people, their ethnicity or culture may be a very strong and central part of their identity. For others, it might not be something that they think about very often. Individuals in cultural majority groups tend to not spend much time thinking about themselves as being a member of that culture, whereas individuals who grew up as members of an ethnic minority group or who immigrated from another country are more likely to consider their cultural identity as an important dimension of their overall self-concept. For adolescents from ethnic minority groups, the process of identity formation includes the choice between two or more sources of identification, their own ethnic group and the mainstream or dominant culture. They often resolve this choice by becoming or developing a bicultural identity, identifying in some ways with their ethnic group and in other ways with the majority culture. Other things that might influence ethnic identity are timing, such as whether someone is a first-generation or second-generation immigrant, media images, or discrimination. Overall, researchers have found that a positive ethnic identity is related to positive outcomes for ethnic minority adolescents, such as higher self-esteem, positive relationships, academic motivation, and lower levels of depression.